Hi everyone, this is Fionapollo and I normally do art commentary, but guess what? If I'm on time with this, then this video should drop on the 28th, which is my birthday. So I'm gonna spend this one talking about my story, Mint and Friends. It's been a while since we last talked about it and there are a good few more of you around, so just to catch you up to speed, I'm making a casual animation project with a couple of friends. It's not a big serious production like the kind of stuff we're seeing emerge in the indie animation scene. I'm nowhere near that level of competence. I just wanted something to work on alongside my channel and it helps me think of art pieces to make during my speed paints. The story is a slice of life comedy / drama that follows Mint, the character used for my avatar, as they move to a new town and delve into the world of entertainment. The story also follows other characters as they all go through a series of interviews and prepare for a talent showcase happening in the city, and it also explores how the group come together and interact during this time. I've been slowly getting back into animation since about 2020, so this story is just my way of doing that without piling on too much pressure. So what I wanted to do today is basically explain where we're at with it story-wise, go into all of the character lore I've been developing, what's been going down since the last video I did on this, and what I hope to get done by the end of the year. Last time we went over the overall concept I had and what direction I'd like it to go in, so this time I wanted to dive a bit further into the backstories and motivations of the characters. Like I said, it's super casual and I'm taking my time with putting things together, but since my initial video, a couple of friends and acquaintances have contributed some really fun things to the project already and have agreed to come aboard and help with various aspects, which has been so exciting. I know this stuff isn't everyone's cup of tea and that's fine. I'll be going back to my regular content in May, but by gum, it's my birthday and I wanted to be self-indulgent. I've also really come to love working on developing this world and these characters, so I just wanted the chance to share that with all of you. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you like the story and also have any suggestions maybe, please let me know. I do have my own vision, but I am open to feedback. Also, let me know if there's any particular character you're liking so far and want to know more about. I really want to know which ones people are currently gelling with. Alright, let's go! Part 1. It all starts with Plum. So last time was more of an introduction to the general aesthetics and concepts of what I had in mind. We were more so just figuring out the vibe, so to speak. This time I want to get into the meat of things and discuss the backstory as to why things are happening and what spurred them on. And I think the best place to start is with the showcase itself. Essentially, the thing that brings all of the characters together is a talent showcase happening in the city. The showcase itself is not a competition, but more of a congregation where people can get together and show off their skills for the hell of it. Also, FYI, to keep in line with the naming convention we have, which is where all of the characters are named after a type of food or ingredient, the city itself is named Kuchen, which I think basically just means kitchen in Dutch. It just sounded cute. So this showcase is being organised by one of our main characters, Plum, who also happens to be the person who had the idea for the showcase in the first place. And man, I kind of feel bad for Plum because I ended up giving her kind of a sad backstory that feeds into why she does this. Even though the story is meant to have comedic moments, I do still want there to be some sincere parts too, and even some hints of reality, which can be pretty hard-hitting sometimes. Basically, at the beginning of our story, Plum has just gone through a divorce. Yeah. And the confusion and stress brought on from that has caused her to essentially throw herself into her work so that she doesn't have to stop and think about everything. In doing so, I'm trying to set up some emotionally compelling motivations for why she decided to cope with her personal circumstance in the way that she does. The surface level motivation is that she wanted to do something that would bring some enjoyment to other people in the best way she knows how. She's a veteran in the entertainment industry and has gone from being a bright star herself to settling down and taking more of a backseat as the next generation of entertainers take over. She's done a little bit of everything. She acts, she sings, she dances, she's hosted shows and events, the whole works. In a sense, I guess she's trying to find her own happiness by proxy of helping someone else reach the heights that she did. She also intentionally sought out some people to interview both as a way to advertise the showcase, but also as a way to gather up a small group of potential proteges that she can kind of focus her attentions on and be a mentor to in a way. I think in this section, even though I want to delve into the main characters' backstories in the next one, Plum's is pretty intrinsic to the plot, so we'll go into hers and another character's here first. But effectively, the driving force behind the showcase, which will be the centre narrative happening in the background, is one woman's attempts to dust herself off from a situation that would understandably have anyone feeling pretty down and out. Plum, like many in such a situation, thinks that she just didn't try hard enough and thinks maybe it was on her that things just fell apart in the way that they did. And I think that will leak into how passionate she is about the showcase. She becomes visibly upset if anything goes wrong and tries to take any potential potential for jeopardy into her own hands. I think I want Plum's character arc to include her realizing that sometimes bad things just happen, and you need to be able to move past them in a healthy way. But even when people in your life leave you, others are still around who care about you and will be willing to help you along the way. And of course, the story wouldn't be called Mint and Friends, or I guess for the moment it's sounding more like Plum and Friends, but we can't have and friends in the title without having that theme of friendship going on too. And that includes friendships and relationships of all types. There's no way Plum would be able to do all of this on her own. In fact, I think she would probably need someone in her corner rooting for her before she even gets the idea to organise the showcase in the first place. So that's where Bubblegum comes in. I like to think that Bubble at first was a typical news journalist who was just really good at schmoozing people for his columns and stuff. Then, as the years went on, he went into conducting news on TV and social media, and his general personality and skills from this enabled him to become affiliated with some pretty prolific individuals. And as you could probably guess, one of those people ended up being Plum. Bubblegum, while being in the entertainment sphere for some time, takes on a much more passive role as a kind of reporter/presenter, a person who acts as a bridge between the entertainers and the general public. Through this, the two have interacted many times both as work colleagues, but have also been friends for a number of years before our story begins. I also like to think that Bubble is the type of person who motivates Plum to pick herself up, but is also able to pull her back when her ambitions run away with her because of that professional aspect to their relationship. I don't particularly want to ship these two, people can if they want, but I'm also not opposed to just having more platonic male and female friendships, you know? I have said in the past that Bubble has a bit of a gossipy streak, so I can definitely see these guys sharing a bottle of wine and roasting people. Bubblegum is an interesting one because I feel like he's gonna have his hands full keeping everyone together. Like I said, he's known Plum for quite a while, and I like to think that she appreciated that despite being in an industry full of yes men, Bubblegum was likely the voice of reason and brought her back to reality whenever they ended up working on projects. As a result, they ended up having a pretty mutually beneficial relationship and also really enjoyed each other's company. So Plum worked hard to open up a bunch of work opportunities for him so that they could both keep propelling each other forward. I think Bubble's motivations are probably the simplest of all the characters for now. He just wants to help one of his longtime friends cope with the situation she's found herself in. And what better way to help her than to take on a project together? So to help his friend out, he agrees to be the interviewer and joint presenter for the showcase. I'm thinking that because Bubble is so good at wringing words out of people and is the main person interacting with both Plum and the interviewees, he ends up culminating quite a few tidbits about all the characters. And I think this will be interesting to use as a plot device as things start to ramp up story-wise and a bunch of threads start to come to a head. Bubble strikes me as the kind of person who can get a bit overwhelmed if he knows something he reckons he shouldn't, which can appear to be in pretty stark contrast to his job, but when you think about it, most interviewers and reporters often are discussing things that either are or will become public knowledge. So keeping secrets, I think, could be where Bubble's gossipy streak really works against him, and I'm hoping this could help to create a bit of conflict in the story when necessary. But with that, the stage is both physically and metaphorically set. Now we just need to find people to fill up those performance slots for our showcase interviews. Another neat thing about this story is that the premise is based on things I used to watch on TV with my mum as a kid, and a big chunk of those tended to be those often cringy but also really exciting televised talent competitions like American Idol, So You Think You Can Dance, and stuff like that. I guess in a sense this story is a bit of an homage to my own childhood nostalgia from the 2000s. A lot of aspects of these shows are also played up for drama, especially the interactions between the contestants, which is also kind of acting as the main inspiration for the characters' future interactions for the moment. So with that, let's go into our interviewees, their backstories, and their motivations. Part 2, the stars of the show. Alright, so we've spoken a bit on Bubble and Plum, so let's go into the other four main characters and what I have planned for them. Starting with our titular character Mint, my idea for their backstory is that they moved to the city to start fresh and find themselves. As a result, they are brand spanking new to the entertainment industry, more or less in its entirety. You know that old story, fresh face in the big city and all that, but I wanted to give a bit more substance to that since the last time we talked about it. What are they leaving behind and how does that feed into their ambitions? And the conclusion I came to may be a bit of a stereotype as far as being gender non-conforming is concerned, but basically they come from a small traditional town and family who may not necessarily oppose their identity, but they also don't really understand it enough either to give Mint the support they need. Because of that, they decide to pack up and leave for greener pastures. Mint moves to Cukin City and finds work as a bartender at a drag bar. While working, they slowly grow more confident with being themselves around people and letting their gender fluidity shine through. And it's here where they become dazzled by all the performances and colourful costumes and expressions of self-love and freedom that come with them. I'll be honest, I think the inspiration for this backstory stems from how me and my mum bonded after I came out, in which we would basically just sit and watch Drag Race together. People have their own thoughts and opinions about that show and about drag in general, such as how it focused originally very heavily on the culture of gay men specifically, and isn't an accurate depiction of drag as a whole, which, are valid criticisms. But there's no denying, especially in the current social landscape, that drag is a very important pillar of identity and expression in the LGBT community, and often acts as a pathway between people discovering aspects of their own identity in turn. And it just felt very fitting for that to play a role in Mint's journey towards understanding themselves. But anyway, following Mint's newfound comfort in their identity, they decide that they want to learn how to dance. But there's a problem. Mint is a gigantic bundle of nerves. They're too nervous to take actual dancing classes, too paralysed by stage fright to do it where they work, and doing so wearing skirts and dresses is also out of the question because of that too. Pretty much the only person they feel fully comfortable expressing themselves around for the moment prior to the story beginning is their girlfriend Sorbet. So instead, they decide, probably against their better judgment, to learn how to dance through the internet and upload their progress via social media, thinking that this is the safest option until they have a chance to properly work on their confidence performing in public. And you know what? This worked really well for them for a while. Their following was small and they didn't have to worry about things getting too big for their boots, and eventually they gained the confidence of performing in front of people through the screen. That is, until their account went viral and they had a bit of a breakdown over it. It only really takes one video or post online for people to discover you, and that's kind of what ended up happening. Bubble came across them first and didn't think much of it, but Plum was very adamant that this was the perfect opportunity to observe someone in the beginnings of their journey and see how far they take it. When Mint finally gets presented with that opportunity, it's a pretty pivotal point for them and the decision to throw themselves into it, which ends up being the driving force behind their own narrative. Mint's overall story arc is pretty squarely focused on them working on their confidence as they sign up for a pretty big challenge, which is obviously the showcase, while also navigating their newfound identity, including how others perceive it. Moving on from Mint, let's go into Sorbet's characterization. With Sorbet, I wanted there to be a way to justify why two people in a relationship would take up half of the showcase's interview slots, and the idea I have is for her to have had a brief stint in the entertainment sphere beforehand, which Plum takes as a way to show someone hoping to jump back into it, but that's not actually what Sorbet wants out of this. During the story, Sorbet is trying to establish herself as a writer because that's where her true ambitions lie. But before this, she was a songwriter for her brother's band and occasionally sang backup vocals. But the band later broke up and she instead used this as a means to shift her focus onto something she was more passionate about. This is actually going to play into her interactions with another character later on, by the way. So Sorbet is a tricky one that I'm still trying to fully figure out. She's sweet as hell and wants to help the people she cares about, but I also don't want that to end up sidelining her importance as an individual separate from Mint and the others. We already witnessed that happening with characters like Millie from Hell of a Boss, and I don't want Sorbet's selflessness to become a hindrance on her relevancy as a character. Of course, there are multiple ways to go about this, but I'm still taking my time with fully thinking it through. For now, while I try to finesse it, Sorbet's characterization is that she kinda struggles to put herself first, which could have a potential domino effect for how her own narrative goes. She agrees to the interviews because she has previous experience in the entertainment world, however short it may have been, and she also wanted to support her partner, but that doesn't exactly leave much room for what she wants to do for herself, which is, write fantasy stories. And I think this could work well as a kind of commentary on how the entertainment industry likes to shoehorn certain people into specific boxes and try to keep them there, even to the detriment of their own ambitions. I have it in my mind that she would try to spin this as a way to promote herself as a writer, but even then, she isn't getting as much time to actually work on that when the audience watching her are expecting music. And she also has to worry about Mint having a breakdown every 5 farts, which is something that will also be brought up in regards to their dynamic as a couple. I think a big part of Sorbet's arc will be to strike a balance between everything and to understand that her own happiness is important, her own desires are valid, and no one who cares about her would want her to give up any part of herself just to make them or anyone else happy. Basically, people like Sorbet just need to be a bit more selfish. The stable people who give their all for others need to give some of that back to themselves, Next up, let's take a look into Cinnamon's arc. So if you've seen any of my other videos that I put out this year, you may have seen me drawing Cinnamon as a kind of baker/waitress. Well, the reason for that is I thought it would be really cute for Cinnamon and her parents to run a family-run cafe/bakery. With Cinnamon, we've established previously that she is extremely ambitious and can be a bit cold or even condescending to those who she doesn't think are trying hard enough. And this causes her to butt heads with Mint a lot as the interviews and the showcase prep goes on. And I do want this dynamic to mutually benefit both of them. I want Mint to feel like they have something to prove to Cinnamon, thus pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, and I want Cinnamon to stop putting so much pressure on herself to see that it's not the destination that's the most important so much as the journey. A big thing I want to establish is why exactly Cinnamon behaves in this way, and at first I thought it would be sweet if Cinnamon wanted to try and bring more business to her family's bakery by effectively being the best in show, but that didn't feel like a big enough push. So I started racking my brains and then got to thinking, what do a lot of overachieving and ambitious kids have in common? Well, from what I've seen, usually ambitious kids also have ambitious parents. I didn't want to go in the typical route of Cinnamon's parents pushing her towards stardom, but instead I thought it would be interesting if they were super supportive of her, but their own ambition and competitiveness surrounding the bakery kind of brushed off on their daughter, and now she feels an enormous amount of pressure to be the best that she can, otherwise she might disappoint them. Like, I have this idea that they have this intense rivalry with a family who own a coffee shop, and while none of that competitiveness is directed at Cinnamon, she still sees the way that they behave when it comes to one-upping this other business and has been observing them do this for her entire life. Been doing some research lately into child psychology and how even small things that we don't think about, such as nitpicking your own appearance, even if you don't do it to your child directly, can still have a profound effect on how they view themselves and others. So I thought that that would be an interesting angle to go into. They're well-meaning people who love their kid, but they don't realise that Cinnamon is subconsciously taking note of the standards brought on by their competitiveness, and this feeds into a toxic cycle of her projecting those insecurities onto other people. I think Cinnamon's arc would involve a lot of self-actualization, not just for herself, but her family too, so that they can all grow as people and mature past the need to be the best and simply enjoy doing what they do. And for our final interviewee, let's take a look at Cherry. Now, this is an interesting one. So the initial concept we had with Cherry is that they are currently at a high point in their creative career, but feel quite isolated and lonely because of the nature of the industry. So I wanted to delve into how Cherry got into that position. Typically when someone gets their big break in the entertainment industry, it usually happens after they sign on with a larger company, right? Such as, for example, striking a record deal to release a certain amount of albums. So while that solves the whole popularity thing, what would cause Cherry to be so lonely? Just making them a generally lone wolf type of character didn't feel very compelling narrative-wise, so I decided to take a bit of inspiration from famous rock singers who pursued their own solo careers. If Cherry was to pursue a solo career though, that means they would have had to be in a group before this. And thus, here is my idea. Cherry and Sorbet were in a band together alongside Sorbet's brother Licorice. I haven't thought of a band name yet, but I imagine they made the band in their teenage years, and the three got along really well, but then when Cherry was given the opportunity to further their own career, they took it and the group kind of drifted apart after he left. I also wanted a dynamic between another pair of characters to act as a parallel to Mint and Cinnamon's rivalry, but not only that, Cherry and Sorbet knowing each other also completes this kind of sequential progression of all 6 of the main characters representing a different stage in a friendship or relationship. You have the new acquaintances / rivals, the ones who used to be really close but drifted apart, and then you have the lifelong friends who always have each other's backs. And I thought that was kind of sweet. But yeah, I like to think Cherry actually really enjoyed it and cared a lot about the two, but when they signed the deal, they felt like they kind of betrayed them in favour of their own success and ended up intentionally distancing themselves. So then I had to think, well, why would they continue with the deal if it made them so unhappy? Since in my mind, Cherry doesn't really strike me as someone who is particularly ravenous for money or fame, and this is where I thought it would be very interesting to give Cherry 2 very complementary personality traits. Cherry might seem super cool and mysterious to people who don't know them, but he's actually just really socially awkward, and I'm actually considering making him autistic, and he also really loves cats. Neurodivergent people tend to really struggle with connecting properly with others, but also often have a lot of empathy for animals, so instead Cherry pours all of his attention into his 6 kitty cats. Is this me projecting? No, of course not, no. I don't want 6 cats. I want 28. But yeah, one thing I want to do with this story is that even though I don't want to fully ground it in reality, like I want the people to have cute apartments and clothes that they probably couldn't afford in the real world, but I do still want them to have some relatable issues. And Cherry's issue is that he was going through a tough time financially, and then signed the record deal so that he could keep all of his pets who mean the world to him. But because he's not a great communicator, he was never able to fully explain his financial situation to the band, either through pride or shame or something to that degree, and as a result just drifted away from them without a word. And this left a bit of lingering resentment and awkwardness that rises to the surface between him and Sorbet as the interviews take place. Cherry's arc would likely be to take this opportunity to finally make amends and be honest about why he left. Misunderstandings can be tricky, but it can also be difficult to come to terms with your mistakes and own up to them. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Oh man, that was way longer than I expected. We'll put a stop in this section here and go over what we've managed to make so far for the project and what I want to accomplish for the rest of the year. I also have something that I want to ask you guys for help on if you don't mind, but again, if you have any thoughts or ideas on any of the characters or their backstories and lore, please let me know. Part 3, What's to Come. Okay, so that's the bulk of what I've thought of so far, and before I get into what we've done in the past year and what we plan to do, I would like to ask for a bit of help and/or advice on something. Basically, I want some input from people for the character design of Sorbet's brother Licorice. Licorice, or Rish for short, is Sorbet's older brother who is really into the alternative music scene, so he's very much inspired by rock, emo, and metal bands. Hence why I made him Licorice, because much like that type of music, many consider it to be an acquired taste. Originally, I thought it would be really cool to give him these kind of twist-style braids that would resemble licorice rope, but I was really struggling to find a brush that had the kind of vibe I was going for, so I then thought about commissioning someone, but everyone I could find who seemed to specialise in making digital brushes of afro or black hairstyles had their DMs closed, and when I tried to do it myself, it took a really long time to draw, let alone animate, which is another thing that needs to be considered too. And the other thing I'm also trying to be considerate about is that someone actually spoke to me and said that they were concerned about the subject of Rastafarianism in a lot of black character designs. The issue surrounding black hairstyles in cartoons especially was also brought up surrounding a character from Murray Lum's indie project Pen Pals Forever. That particular situation has been resolved now, but it got me thinking, and now I'm a little bit stuck on what to do for my own character. Because I did in fact want to give him locks because I thought that would look cool when he headbangs and stuff, and also because Licorice's character is inspired by several frontmen in emo and rock bands such as Magnolia Park, Block Party, and Skindred, who all for the most part have that kind of hairstyle as well. The fact that these characters will also be animated is also kind of making it a bit tricky to come to a decision because I want to be able to comfortably replicate the style without spending more time on it than the rest of the animation taking place. And this is historically why black characters' hairstyles have always seemed a bit limited or even weird looking within the medium. So I just want to hear what people think about it and whether or not you guys have any ideas or alternatives in that regard. I don't know if I'm thinking too hard on it, but if that person hadn't mentioned it as a potential issue, then I don't think as a white person I would have even considered it. So I just want to accommodate that. But yeah, that aside, what have we managed to do since the last time I did a video discussing this story? Well, shortly after uploading the last one, I was approached by Shirley Draws, who offered to create a song I mentioned wanting to do. Basically, I threw the concept out there that I wanted to make a theme song for the project, but I myself don't really have any musical experience. Shirley made a beautiful sounding demo that I've actually used in a couple of shorts for the story to test out the animation. It's still a work in progress because she's quite busy, and as I keep saying, this is a very casual project, so I'm not about to make her rush. Also, on the subject of short animations, a friend of mine, Ed Stravagant, has offered to be a voice actor for Bubblegum. His voice has been featured in 2 videos so far. One was for an off-screen character, and the other was for a 360 VR version of an icebreaker-style interview before the real ones begin production to test the waters. It's been really fun so far. Ed is a really talented voice actor and has done a couple of comic dubs in the past, and plans to hopefully get back into them to further practice his skills. I've actually had several people offering to help me in the sound, voice, and music departments, so Mint and Friends now has a pretty decent sound team, which I was honestly expecting to be the thing I would have the most difficulty sorting out. I've seen a few people mention that my video sound quality has improved this year, and that's because I've been getting help from Ecliptic Studio, who will also be hopefully okay with the sound mixing for our episodes too. I've also been writing up my ideas for how I want the story and episodes to be presented, and for now, I think I want the characters to each get around 4 one-minute interview videos in the form of YouTube shorts, which I will then compile into playlists as they go on. If these shorts end up going over quite well, as in we have an easy time with the sound, the music, the voice acting, the animation and all of that, then I'll consider making something more long form where we get into the characters' actual backstories and we get a bit more of an authentic feel to them. But for now, we're going to keep the production short, sweet, and as low stress as possible. Lord knows I already have enough going on, and the people who have offered their help also have their own lives. I think by the end of the year, I want to have scripted all of the interview shorts for at least one of the characters. Then I think we'll be able to consider putting out voluntary casting calls, and then moving on with the rest of production. That first character may likely be Mint, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure if it may be a good idea to seek out a different voice actor for them. If not, then I'm thinking of possibly pitching down my voice because I kind of want Mint to sound ever so slightly more ambiguous, but what do you guys think of that? Anyway, this is all I have so far in terms of what's in store. I hope you guys like it, and again, I'm pretty open to feedback, so please let me know if you have any ideas or suggestions. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I've had so much fun developing these characters and thinking up this story in my head. I don't know how much of this is actually going to get made. I don't know how far we're going to get, but it doesn't really matter because in the moment, it's enjoyable and people seem keen. So that's what currently matters to me. But anyway, thank you so much. Stay safe, everyone. Bye!